Hey guys, it's me Ida. Welcome back to my channel. So today this video is actually one of my most exciting videos to share with you guys. This video is going to be all about learning the type of hair you have, and not just your curl pattern, but your hair density, your porosity, your hair texture, and also if you're protein sensitive or not. I think this is gonna be a really good foundation to know how to care for your hair and just to have the best hair products, best styling techniques, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so first things first, everyone always wants to know what their curl pattern is. And so I'm gonna quickly talk about how to determine your curl pattern, and then I'm gonna talk about how it's really not that useful when you're trying to figure out what the best products are for your hair and what the best regimen is for your hair. So the curl pattern starts from 1 to a 4, and then there's different categories within those numbers. So type 1 is straight hair, and then type 2 is wavy, type 3 curly, and then type 4 is coily. So this chart kind of gives you a rough idea. So yeah, so for me, I personally think that my curl pattern is like 3C around the front of my hair and maybe like framing my face. And then I feel like in the back it's 4A. So I've had people tell me in the comments that I don't have type 4A hair and that I do have 3C, but I personally think this is not 3C hair. What do you guys think? You tell me. Also, when you're trying to assess your curl pattern, definitely don't look at your damaged hair, because I had some damaged pieces in the front and it looked like it could have been like a 3A. And really, you gotta look at your healthy hair to really assess your hair. Also, you wanna keep in mind too with your curl pattern is that when your hair starts growing out, you can have a looser curl pattern because the weight of your hair is going to weigh it down. So when I did a big chop, my hair was only about 3-4 inches long. My curls actually looked a lot tighter, especially the front. I had a lot more shrinkage, but also I had no hair basically weighing down my curls to loosen them out. The only thing I can see that's useful in determining your curl pattern is number 1, to help visualize someone's hair. It still won't give you like the full picture because you don't have like your texture involved, you don't have the density. Also, if you have type 4 hair, you are gonna have a lot more shrinkage than the other types of hair. So there are a few misconceptions when it comes to type 4 hair. And number 1 is that all type 4 hair is coarse hair. And that's not the case. For me, I do have coarse texture, so it is a case for me. But in a lot of cases, actually, there are a lot of women out there and men out there that have type 4 hair, but they have fine textured hair. So any type hair can have any hair texture, whether it be fine, medium, or coarse. And another misconception is that type 4 hair needs heavy products. My hair actually hates heavy butters because I have low porosity hair, which we will get into later on in the video and why that's important when it comes to picking out your products. And so now let's actually get into what I find is actually very important when it comes to figuring out your hair care regimen. Okay, so let's talk about hair texture first. So hair texture, there are 3 different hair textures. There is fine, medium, and coarse. So hair texture basically just means that you take an individual hair strand, and depending on what size that hair strand is determines what your hair texture is. And also keep in mind that you can have more than one hair texture on your head. And so we're gonna go into detail about how to figure out what your hair texture is, and I'm gonna go ahead and tell you what mine is. So here are some of the characteristics of fine textured hair. So if you take your hair strand and you put it in between your fingers, if you can barely feel your hair or you can't even feel it at all, then that's a really good sign that you have fine textured hair. Also, if you take a hair strand and you basically just hold it up or even put it up against like a white piece of paper or a white wall, if you can barely see it, then that's also a good sign that you have fine textured hair. So in fine textured hair, the hair strand is very thin because it actually only has 2 layers, which is the cuticle and the cortex, and it's actually missing the medulla. So now that you know that you have thinner hair strands, you have to be more delicate and gentle with your hair because it definitely is more at risk to hair breakage. So you just want to be gentle when you're handling your hair, washing it, styling it. And also when you're applying heat or chemicals or anything in your hair that can be damaging to it, you definitely want to be extra careful with that and use protein treatments to strengthen your fine, thin hair strands, because you're more at risk than the other hair strands to basically have damage in your hair. Also, you are more at risk of over conditioning your hair, and so you want to make sure to also increase the protein in your hair regimen as well, because if your hair is over conditioned, it's going to be really limp and mushy and it's going to lose its curl pattern, and you just need to give it that strength back into the hair strands. Also, because your hair strands are very thin, you want to make sure that your products you're using are not heavy, and you want to use smaller amounts because your hair does get weighed down. Okay, so let's move on to coarse textured hair. So a couple ways to find out if you have coarse textured hair is that you can also take your hair strand and put it in between your fingers. And if you can actually feel the hair strand, then you have coarse textured hair. Also, if you just hold up your hair strand, you can definitely see it very clearly. So with coarse textured hair, the hair strand is more thick compared to the other hair textures. It has all its cuticle layers compared to the fine textured hair. And it actually has a lot more protein, and that's why it's very strong and thick. And because of all the extra protein in coarse textured hair, it may appear to be stiff. This is what my hair looks like after taking it down from a pineapple after a wash and go for the second day. And when my hair is dry, it is very stiff and there's not that much movement because I do have coarse textured hair. So I have to spray my hair with some water to give it some flexibility. Okay, so now if you think that your hair is coarse in texture and now you want to know why does this matter? Okay, so a few things. Number one, so when you have coarse textured hair, your hair is going to be more resistant to any chemical treatments like relaxers, hair dyes, or anything like that. And so you have stronger hair, so it kind of makes sense your hair is able to withstand a lot more harsher treatment. I'm not saying to do that, but I'm just saying that, you know, you don't have to be as careful as someone with finer textured hair. Okay, so another reason why you would have to know if you have coarse textured hair is because your hair has more protein than the other hair strands. So your hair actually may be a little protein sensitive because you already have enough of its own natural proteins. So you want to make sure to focus more on moisture, but you definitely want to make sure you still have enough proteins in your hair regimen. So when you feel like your hair is becoming more over conditioned, then that's when you go ahead and add a protein treatment in there. But you definitely want to kind of stay away from a lot of products that have a lot of protein in there because it's going to make your hair even more stiff, more hard, more dry. So because you have coarse textured hair, you can get away with using heavier products than someone with fine textured hair because your hair is not going to get weighed down. But again, like I said, if you do have low porosity with coarse textured hair, you are going to have to maybe stay away from really heavy products and maybe stick to light to medium. Compared to someone with fine textured hair, you can definitely use heavier products. Okay, so next category, hair density. When someone says, oh, her hair is thin or his hair is thin, they're actually referring to low density hair. So basically, how thick does your hair look? How many hair strands do you have on your head in total? So a couple of signs you can tell if you have low to medium to high density hair is, can you easily see your scalp? So when I say easily, without even really touching your hair, not really manipulating or moving it around, can you see your scalp? So you can't even really see my scalp. So I would say I have high density hair. Also, if you put your hair in a ponytail, is your ponytail really thick or is it really thin? So for medium density, you can kind of see your scalp, but not really. So it's not really noticeable. But if you have low density hair, you can really see your scalp. So why is it important to determine what type of density your hair is? If you have low density hair, meaning that your hair is thin, you have to make sure to use lighter products so that you can actually increase the volume of your hair and to make it appear thicker. And also when you're styling your hair, if you're doing braid outs and twist outs, you want to use smaller sections so that when you undo and unravel the twists and braid outs, your hair is actually going to appear a lot thicker and have a lot more volume. If you have high density hair, you can actually use heavy, light, medium products. Also, when you're styling your hair in braid outs or twist outs, you want to use medium to big sections so that you get more volume. If you use smaller sections, your hair is going to be really compact and tight and basically kind of shrunken up, and it's not going to really have that much volume. This is what my hair looks like when I use really small sections with a flexi rod or a perm rod. My hair is very compact and it's very hard for me to get volume, but I do have a lot of definition. So usually medium sections are the best because I get definition, but then I also get some volume. All right, so on to the next section. I really love learning about porosity because I really feel like that's probably the most important category to knowing your hair type. Okay, so there are 3 categories to porosity. There's low porosity, medium porosity, and high porosity. Basically, hair porosity just means the ability to absorb and retain moisture into your hair. Okay, so for low porosity hair, the cuticles lay flat and tight, and it's very hard to absorb moisture into the hair, but once the moisture is in the hair, it retains it very well. For medium porosity hair, the cuticles are slightly raised, but not too much, and it's actually very easy to absorb the moisture into your hair and retain it very well. And for high porosity hair, the cuticles are highly raised and chipped and might have some holes and gaps in the cuticles, and so basically because of that, it's very easy to absorb any moisture into the hair, but it's very hard to actually retain that moisture once it's inside the hair. Okay, so there are some tests that you can do to see if you have low porosity, medium porosity, or high porosity hair. So I'm gonna quickly talk about one test that you can do, and then I'm gonna talk about actual signs to look out for in your hair. So if you take a glass of water and you take one of your hair strands and actually put it inside the cup of water, you gotta make sure that your hair strand is clean and doesn't have any product on there. And if you place it in the cup of water, if your hair floats for a really long time, you have low porosity hair. If you have high porosity hair, it's going to go all the way down to the bottom and sink there. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and talk about low porosity hair first. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the most common signs. So number one sign is that your hair easily gets product buildup. So, you know, you see some white flakes in your hair, or you just feel like the product never really fully penetrates into your hair. It just kind of sits on top of your hair. Also, your hair takes forever to get wet or fully saturated with water. If you're taking a shower and you notice that, you know, your hair has just been sitting underneath the water for several minutes and it's still not fully saturated with water, that's really a good sign that you have low porosity hair. Or you can actually just see like water beads sitting on top of your hair and hasn't really penetrated into your hair strands yet. Also, if your hair takes a long time to dry. So like I mentioned earlier, once your hair actually absorbs that moisture, it retains it very well, and that's why your hair takes a very long time to dry, because the moisture is still in your hair. Another sign can be that your hair may be protein sensitive. This is not always the case. Okay, so another sign is that your hair is very resistant to chemical treatments like hair dyes, relaxers, or anything like that. It also goes along with like deep conditioners and all that kind of stuff. Everything just takes a bit longer than the required time because it takes so long for low porosity hair to absorb anything. Okay, so if you think that your hair is low porosity, here are some of the tips that I have for you to help you moisturize your low porosity hair. Use warm water when moisturizing your hair. Warm water will actually help you slightly raise the hair cuticles to allow more product to absorb into your low porosity hair. Also, you want to apply those products on damp hair, because when you apply products on very wet hair, you really leave no room for the product to absorb into your hair because the water is taking up all the space. And if you apply the product on dry hair, the cuticles are actually closed. So you want to lift those cuticles very slightly with having damp hair with warm water. Also, when you're deep conditioning, definitely use heat. So you can use a hooded dryer, you can use this hair steamer, you can also use the baggy method with putting a plastic cap on your head, or also on top of that, applying a towel over top of your head or a hat or anything like that to increase the heat from your scalp. So heat will also, just like warm water, help slightly raise your hair cuticles to allow you to absorb more product into your low porosity hair. So you are gonna have to clarify your hair a bit more often than someone with high porosity hair, because products are going to tend to build up on your hair over time because your cuticles are very closed. Also, using lightweight water-based leave-in conditioners are very good for low porosity hair, because those are gonna actually absorb into your hair and provide that moisture that your hair really needs. And then you can go ahead and seal that moisture in with either a light to medium oil or a medium butter or a light butter. Try not to use heavy butters because it's gonna sit on top of your hair. However, there are some people out there with low porosity hair that actually do use heavy butters and they have no issues with it. So definitely go ahead and try it out to see if it works well with you. Also, when you're looking into products, you might be protein sensitive. So if you are, definitely go ahead and kind of stay away from products that have proteins in it, or you can go ahead and use smaller size proteins in your hair products. And I do have a video all about that. I'm gonna leave that in the description box below. And also want to stay away from silicones, because silicones are going to sit on top of your hair. It's going to kind of feel like a waxy coating feeling on your hair, and it's going to prevent your hair from actually absorbing moisture like water into your hair. There are some silicones that are better for you than other silicones, and they're actually soluble in water, so you want to experiment to see which silicones work better for your hair. Also, just smoothing in a product in your hair, like using like the praying hands method, is so helpful for moisturizing your hair. Like for me, when I actually have product in my hair, I basically just kind of like force it in, either going like this is the praying hands method, or just taking a section and just kind of going over it like this. And for me, I find that it helps me because it's kind of forcing in that product in your hair cuticle. And sometimes if I don't do that, the product basically just sits on top of my hair. Also, when moisturizing your hair, you want to go ahead and actually use either the LCO method, which is the leave-in conditioner, the cream, and then the oil, or the LG method, leave-in conditioner and gel, or the leave-in conditioner and oil, so the LO method, or leave-in conditioner and a cream, the LC method. So that is basically just a term used to how you're gonna layer your products. So if your hair doesn't really like 3 products on its hair because it's very sensitive to product buildup, then definitely go ahead and try those other methods that only have 2 products in there, and always start off with the leave-in conditioner first and then use any one of those other products like a gel, oil, or a cream to actually seal in that leave-in conditioner. Because if you just have leave-in conditioner by itself, a lot of the times it's just not gonna be able to keep that moisture in your hair. Okay, so high porosity hair, basically total opposite to low porosity hair. So some of the signs of high porosity hair is that your hair actually absorbs way too much product way too fast. As soon as you apply the product onto your hair, it basically has no issues in absorbing it. So the only downfall with that is that once it's actually in your hair actually dries out also very quickly too, because just like how fast it absorbs the moisture, it doesn't retain the moisture as well as low porosity hair. Also, your hair may tangle more often because the cuticles are highly raised compared to low porosity hair. And so when your cuticles are raised, they can kind of latch onto each other and basically cause tangling. So if you think you have high porosity hair, here are some tips that are gonna help you moisturize your hair. Number 1, use the LOC method when applying moisture onto your hair. So basically it's the layering of your products. So leave-in conditioner, oil, and then cream. Because your hair has such a hard time retaining that moisture in, you're putting that oil before the cream. So it gives your hair more time to basically stall so that you have time to absorb that cream after the oil has absorbed into your cuticles. So you also want to go ahead and use heavier creams and butters to actually seal your hair. If you have fine textured hair, you don't really want to use heavier products because it's going to weigh your hair down. But because you have high porosity hair, you really do need to, layer your products in a way where you are going to retain that moisture for a longer period of time. Another tip for high porosity hair is that you definitely want to incorporate pre-poos into your cleansing and washing regimen. Putting an oil before actually washing at your hair is so beneficial to high porosity hair. Because your hair is able to absorb so much water all at once, it can really cause a lot of damage to your hair because the weight of your hair just kind of pulling down the cuticles. It's already raised and chipped, and it's going to create a lot more damage, a lot more wear and tear. The oil will basically absorb into your hair cuticles and basically kind of prevent or slow down the absorption of water from washing your hair. Coconut oil has actually been proven to be one of the best oils for doing a pre-poo because it absorbs into your hair cuticles much better than any other oil out there. And also it kind of mimics protein, so it kind of gives strength to your hair, and that's what high porosity hair needs. Also, using silicones in your hair products can be very beneficial to high porosity hair. And if your hair is high porosity because of hair damage, then you definitely want to incorporate proteins and do protein treatments more often to give you that temporary fix that protein does, and kind of gives you that strength that your hair needs to kind of prevent further damage. So you also want to seal your hair using cold water because cold water is going to slightly close your cuticles, and basically you want to seal as much as possible after absorbing in that moisture because, like we mentioned earlier, high porosity hair has a hard time retaining in that moisture. Also, you want to incorporate apple cider vinegar and aloe vera juice into your hair regimen to help close that cuticle because they are very low in the pH level. They're acidic, and so anything acidic is going to help close your cuticle layers. So if you get hair damage, like with chemical treatments, hair dyes, over time your hair can actually become more porous and your hair can turn into high porosity hair. The ends of your hair might be more porous than the roots of your hair because your ends of your hair have been around for years. They've been through a lot of wear and tear, and so your hair will become more porous. If you have high porosity hair due to damage, you can eventually actually get low porosity or even medium porosity hair by actually incorporating a healthy hair care regimen. Your hair can definitely change its porosity, but for the most part, your genetics play a big role in what your hair porosity is, and then going forward, depending on what you decide to do to your hair, can actually change your porosity over time. And also, just to mention one other thing, is that you can actually have more than one porosity in your hair. And so for best results, it's definitely best to actually treat the different areas of your hair accordingly to your hair porosity. Okay, so last but not least is protein sensitive hair. So basically, if you're using products that have protein in it, right away your hair feels really hard and stiff and brittle and dry. Even if you're just using products that have a small amount, your hair reacts really badly to proteins a lot quicker than someone that's not protein sensitive. Try out some products that are protein free and just kind of see the difference of your hair to see if your hair really likes it or not. And so for me, I do have protein sensitive hair, especially like the majority of my hair. Not so much in the front. So for me, most of my products are actually protein free. And what I do is once I feel that my hair looks a little over conditioned, that's when I know that I have to put more protein into my hair to get a proper protein moisture balance. And then I'll do like a protein treatment, a really light one, because I can't use heavy products with lots of proteins in them or like larger size proteins, because it's gonna just kind of make my hair really hard. It's gonna sit on top of my hair. So there are certain hair types that are more protein sensitive. If you have coarse textured hair, low porosity hair, or healthy hair, you are more prone to being protein sensitive. So these hair characteristics, they already have enough of its own protein to not really need any additional protein from products, or their cuticles are very closed and shut and protein will just sit on top of their hair and not penetrate inside of it. So when you actually add more protein to hair that doesn't really need protein, it's gonna make the hair feel really hard and stiff and brittle, because protein actually makes the hair strong. Everyone's hair does need protein eventually, but protein sensitive hair will just need it less often. So you don't want to neglect protein in your hair regimen, but you want to basically just kind of assess your hair from time to time and see when your hair actually needs protein. And I also want to mention that I came across a quiz to help you determine what your hair type is on naturallycurly.com. So I'm going to leave the details below. And these are the results that I received, and they are pretty accurate. So let me know how the quiz works out for you. So I'm going to leave a list of products that I find to be very, very good for low porosity hair and also for high porosity hair as well. So yeah, I hope this video was really helpful, and I thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.